The lid down on the coffee table next to the lens. I picked up the box and set it on my lap. If I picked up the lens and accidentally dropped it, I had at least a remote chance it would fall back into the box, and I could begin my initial inspection of the lens with it inside the box anyways. I could see the black tourmaline Thry piece, which looked like nothing so much as a weird sculpted lifesaver candy, maybe licorice flavor with mint where the white veins ran through the stone. I guessed the interior of the lifesaver was about a ½ inch in diameter. I could easily see where a clear quartz crystal point met the inside of the Thry piece, but that was about all I could see while it was still in the case. I picked up the box, feeling a little bit braver now as I gently tilted the box to one side and looked at the other end of the lens. I could see some kind of glass lens, but again, my view was limited. It did at least appear to be the same object I had seen in my dream. I set the case down on my lap and looked at the middle section of the lens. There was some kind of joint where two sections of wood met, not quite in the middle, closer to the front than the back, and with something fitted inside the joint. I squinted and could just make out what looked like the edges of two pieces of glass sitting inside the joint. I inhaled sharply and leaned forward. I knew what those were. I did not want to think about what those were used for. Nestling the case in my lap, I picked up the lid with the other hand and set it on top of the case. It came together almost with a sigh, as if there was some kind of hermetic seal or something happening. I could feel my forehead furrowing and rubbed it, trying to smooth out the, at this point, permanent lines there. I set the case back down on the table, still holding the lid between my hands. Wanting to give it another try, I gently lifted the lid, watching intently to see if I could see what might happen. The lid came off with a gentle whisper. I swear, it sounded like someone inhaling quietly. Creepy. I put the lid back on, and again, as it closed seamlessly, I heard a sound, like an exhalation or a sigh. That was enough for one day, for me. I picked up the case and rather unceremoniously put it back in the bag, then stashed it under the coffee table. I was done. Time for a bubble bath. Calgon, take me away. La Hacienda Hermosa. Tucked between the Sam Houston Tollway and the Parkway Toll Road on the southwest outskirts sat La Hacienda Hermosa. It was a stupendous creation, a work of art in Spanish colonial architectural style. A huge portico formed the entrance, standing 3 stories tall, with echoing arched windows lining either side. Marble-clad columns stood guard at both ends, with the 10-foot-high double doors of highly polished cherry beckoning any who were brave enough to stand up, step up, and knock. Poplars lined the long circular drive leading up to the front steps, with a wide concrete apron for auxiliary parking alongside the 4-car garage. A bougainvillea twisted lazily up and over a trellis, ruby red blossoms bobbing gently in the breeze. The distant hum of a power lawnmower echoed from blocks away. Here in this place, everything was very quiet. Inside the estate was yet more stillness and quiet. A picture-perfect architectural digest layout with the foyer in black marble floors and creamy satin wallpaper, a narrow glass table on brass legs along one wall, holding a crystal vase of fresh-cut, long-stemmed red roses, their fragrance hanging heavy in the air. There were hallways going south and east, all in dark oak, polished floors and pale gray walls, black trim of baseboards and door frames, casting a solemn tone. More hallways led off of open rooms where brief glimpses of sofas and tables, lamps and curtains passed quickly by as you continued deeper. Galleys and galleries, guest suites and master suites, libraries, and a music room with a black grand piano in the center of an otherwise entirely empty white room. You quickly lost track of where you were going, and how to get back. It was a maze rather than amazing, and probably the reason Architectural Digest had never actually done a spread on the place. Finally, of course, maybe last but certainly not least, there was the wine cellar. an actual wine cellar, accessed off of the kitchen, with aisles of racks of dusty bottlenecks jutting out of holes. It smelled dank and damp, and the fight against the perpetual humidity was evident in the background hums of dehumidifiers. While Architectural Digest may not have come by for a look-see at the house, the much-revered Wine Enthusiast magazine had come out and done a spread on this particular collection of wines, which had earned the neighborhood a small amount of notoriety as perhaps being worthy of snobbiness. The neighbors tended to look aside when the owner of the residence was involved in yet another garden renovation or when he had one of his more outlandish evening events, being a fair enough trade, all things considered. The quiet before the storm. I made an executive decision to not do anything with the lens for a week. I was not going to dream about it, or think about it, or look at it. Period. If nothing else, my sessions in the White Room had taught me how to concentrate my focus onto something or away from something. So my mind just kept skittering past any of those thoughts the first couple of days. After that, it wasn't so hard. Bob was almost a welcome distraction. Bob was my so-called boyfriend, although he certainly wasn't a boy. He was 10 years older than my 44 years, and I don't know that I would call him a friend. He usually called me when he was in town. He was living in Dallas at the time. And we'd get together for dinner and drinks, usually followed by some kind of nominal sex at my place. None of my friends liked him. They said he was old and staid. Mostly true. When they were being kind, both of my parents were dead, so I didn't have to hear anything from them at least. I suppose the fact that Bob was still technically married may have had something to do with the way my friends felt about them. I told them to stop worrying about it. It was fine as it was with me. That usually stopped the conversation from going any further, with my friends at least. It didn't help that I secretly agreed with most of what they said. I seemed to have a talent for picking up men who were either down on their luck, usually temporarily, or married. Bob and his wife had separated for about a year, and when I asked him every now and then when they were going to get divorced, he would just shake his head and change the subject. At the moment, the prospect of finding something to do by myself again or doing something with Bob seemed to be a pretty easy choice if I didn't let myself think about it too hard. It was a Tuesday. I was sitting in the lunchroom at work, shoving my sandwich in my face while scrolling through Facebook on my phone, not paying much attention to either my sandwich or what I was looking at on the phone, when it started vibrating, startling me with a call coming in. The phone jumped out of my hand, I swear it did, and landed on the floor, separating into back cover, battery, and phone. I swore and grabbed the pieces off the floor. Tony poked his head through the doorway with an, "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I mumbled and slid my chair back to the table as I sat down. Put everything back together, waited for the phone to boot back up again, and scowled. I would have to reset all of my settings again. Finally, the phone finished booting up and I could see who had called. It was Bob. I texted him a, "Hey there, sorry I couldn't get your call. I'm at work. Call you when I get home?" I waited a couple of minutes and saw the reply, "Meet me at Sizzler at 6 p.m. Well, that sounded nominally interesting. "Sure, see you then," I texted back, dropping the phone in my purse. I hope I felt as excited about our little rendezvous after I got off of work as my text sounded. I threw the rest of my chips and veggies in the trash. I'd lost my appetite.